And welcome everybody, this is another episode of the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. I am your host, Callahan, and joining me today in the booth is Spleenface. Spleen, how's it going this week?
It's going all right, and I'm happy to finally take a crack at commentating some of these games.
Yeah, so instead of hearing Reed or last week Pongo be critical of your plays, you get to be critical of Pongo's plays this week.
Yeah.
So
it's just a shame you couldn't have got Reed in these games, so I could.
I know. We'll eventually get Reed in some of here, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But this week, if you haven't noticed, we are doing some games with the Play to Win folks, Dylan and Cam from over there. So we got some games in with them. And they're playing some pretty interesting decks, one of which is a list that I've worked a lot on. Dylan, actually, he and I have talked a lot about this list together. And his list kind of is jumping off from mine. I kind of haven't worked on this as much recently, so he's made some changes. But Dylan's playing Timna Jessica, the Mad Farm list. So for the people who haven't watched our previous episodes or are not familiar with this list, Spleen, what is it exactly doing?
So the idea behind farm decks, at least initially, and this is sort of true to that idea, is that you play Timna the Weaver as a card advantage engine in the command zone, and then a bunch of small creatures, and then it's a Turbo Naz strategy. And so the idea is you have these really small, either like evasive or somewhat utility creatures that enable both your Timna plan and then the creature synergy pieces, your cards like Culling the Weak and Diabolic Intent, to sort of speed up the deck. And then you just want to jam as fast as possible and ad nauseum appear into the abyss, some sort of breach combo, whatever it is. So it's certainly an all-in deck. And right. The original one was, in fact, Mardu. That was Mad Farm. And then people have made Abzan versions and Esper versions and 4-color versions and all of that. But we're back to Mardu with the new Jessica Thrice Reborn, which we've talked about a bit on episodes of the podcast, but obviously it supplements Timna reasonably nicely. You can remove some problematic hate bears. If those arise, you can sometimes put damage on things, and then also she's an infinite mana outlet, which cleans up the win condition issue that these decks have historically had. The original iteration of the list, I believe, was on like a dual caster Twin Flame line, which is fine, but reasonably mana intensive. And then the Leonin Relic Warder, Blood Artist, Animate Dead type loops, which definitely are a hit to card quality and kind of awkward to set up. The double white on Salvagers can be awkward, not Salvagers, Relic Warders can be awkward. But now you can just play infinite mana with, as this list has, Auriok, Salvagers, and Lion's Eye Diamond, and then just cast Jessica a bunch and kill your opponents, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've seen my list on this channel, and me kind of do sort of play a turbo list as a mid-range player, so obviously I'm not the best, person to be piloting it in all, situations. But there are some notable changes with Dylan's list from the list that I kind of started off with, and that is inclusion of some of the original tech from that old Mad Farm list, in that it does include the Twin Flame and Dual Caster Mage backup combo lines here. What does this add to this list that, as compared to my list, which was all in on the infinite mana, what does this package add to the table?
So what it lets you do is it lets you avoid the reliance on, first of all, creature-activated abilities that comes with Auriok Salvagers, and second of all, the graveyard. And even, obviously, like, it is still you need a creature in play, and then it's 2 and triple red to win, which can be difficult to pull off without artifact mana, but the deck is running a few different sort of red rituals. You've got your Jeska's Will, you have Rite of Flame, you have Simian Spirit Guide, so it is not out of the question to pull it off through Artifact Hate, though obviously it's rough. So yeah, it's a combo that is a little bit clunky, but actually is hated out by a lot less stuff than either Auriok Salvagers or like various Breach lines.
Awesome. And it also, one of the things it does include as well is the Cloudstone Curio, combination, and that's specifically going off of Dockside, and I think looking at this list, it looks like the combo with that would be Roger. Am I correct in seeing it that way?
Yeah, so like these lists have historically played some amount of 0 mana creatures to enable, the Culling the Weeks, the Diabolic Intents, and then like Memnite has historically been the best one of these because it has 1 power, which means you can draw cards with Tymna. I'm not sure I'm sold on Rograk necessarily in this list. It does make the Curio Dockside combo a little bit cheaper, but the deck already has like a decent number of 1-drops and 2-drops that are non-artifacts. And like it's really not that difficult. We're talking about if you want to go off with one of the like 3 or 4 1-drops and Dockside, you need your Dockside to make 4 treasures, which is not particularly a difficult ask. It does play nicely with the Mox Amber that's in the list. And it is like having Mox Amber is very nice as a bootstrapping card post Ad Nauseam. Because I guess one thing maybe I should have sort of gone into when we were talking about farm generally. Farm decks were sort of the first decks that would expect to win if they cast an Ad Nauseam in their main phase with no mana. Like that, back in the day, that was not like a consistent thing in a deck like Consult Scepter Thrasios or like Paradox Scepter Thrasios back, if we want to go to like the Land Before Time. Those decks, they could do it, but it was definitely not like a consistent, oh yeah, I'll just cast the Naz and then I'll win. Or decks like Kess. Zur was usually pretty good at it, but generally they were going for big Necros anyways. So farm was like, the idea was it really pared down the curve. The curve was way lower than pretty much anything you'd seen on like a non-green deck. Like the Dorks lower the curve a lot, but if we look at this list, it's like a 1.7. I think that's about where the original list was, and like Kess decks at the time were flirting with 2. It was like 1.9 whatever was sort of an average CMC. And then they didn't have cards like Culling the Week, so they were certainly less likely to sort of from a standing start win after an Ad Nauseam. And Mox Amber definitely does help with that, and Rograk helps with the Mox Amber, so I guess it, I see why it's included, but I'm still not entirely sold on playing a 0 mana creature in a Tymna deck.
Right. Well, we will see, what becomes of that. We do have 2 games lined up for you guys today. So we'll be able to see exactly how that pans out for Dylan in these games. Up next is his counterpart from Play to Win is Cam. He's going to be playing a Teamer control list helmed by Thrasios in Crom. And so we were talking about this deck a little bit before we went on air. And so what is it that this is doing right now?
So this is like the quintessential like mid-range deck. You don't have Naz, so you're not trying to do like the super fast wins. I noticed this list actually doesn't have Breach even, which is somewhat surprising. Even without like a dedicated combo, you can do some silly things with like, you have a bounce spell in your graveyard and you bounce a Dockside and whatever. But this list has Kinnan combos with Basalt Monolith. It has Dockside Extortionist combos with Baron and Deadeye Navigator, and So it's generally just looking to make infinite mana, and then draw its deck with Thrasios and win. You know, it has Finale of Devastation for like a hard win, but you know, when you draw your deck and you have infinite mana, winning is largely a formality. It also has it also has the Lore Drakus combo, which is you have Dockside, and then you play it. It makes treasures. You cast Lore Drakus, and you mutate it onto the Dockside, which gets you back a bounce spell, which you then bounce the mutated Lore Drakus Dockside pair to your hand, and then repeat that process to net the treasures. So this deck seems very, very all in on, or I guess it has the one backup of Kin and Basalt Monolith, but generally extremely focused around Dockside.
Correct. And there is not a Thassa's Oracle in the deck. So what is this deck doing to close the game out? Is this going to be very similar to kind of what Pongo's Kinnan list did, where it's winning with a finale? You know, what is the win con here?
Yeah, so finale is definitely a possibility, but decks like these, you know, you can set up. You have this Lore Drakus, so you can set up with Lore Drakus and like the Baron, or with Lore Drakus and Baron, you can buy back any number of spells any number of times. So there's a Lightning Bolt in the deck, which is probably there primarily to answer, you know, Hull Breachers and Opposition Agents and Drannith Magistrates, but also wins the game if you cast it enough times. Historically, decks like these have made infinite swans with Swan Song, and then you just, you know, hold up all the counter spells in your deck until your next turn, and then you kill everyone with swans. And then, yeah, obviously, you know, finale is usually how you win, just because it's simple.
Right.
But there's also possibilities. There's a Phantasmal Image in the deck, which you can sometimes copy other people's winny stuff with.
Right.
And I guess also one thing that I should mention is I said there was a Deadeye Navigator in the deck, which is like often regarded as kind of a strange inclusion. Yes, it has the lowest, like, your Dockside needs to make the least amount of treasures to win with it, because it only costs 2 to activate, but obviously it's a 6 mana spell, so that's kind of rough. But it has the added advantage that it works with Phantasmal Image, where things like Baron and Emil don't. Like, if you Phantasmal Image somebody else's Dockside Extortionist, you can Soul Bond to it and flicker it.
Right.
Because you can't target it, otherwise it gets sacrificed. So Baron or Emil would just kill it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is a pretty interesting list to see at this table. You know, we don't see a lot of Teamer sort of control lists as frequently, especially on this channel. You know, I think the last Teamer list we saw last week was you on Calamax. So it'll be interesting to see what this does, especially when it is up against what Cobblepott has brought this week. He's also playing Farm, but he's playing a very interesting version of it, which, of course, you know, it wouldn't be a Cobblepott deck if it wasn't interesting, right? He is playing Tymna the Weaver in Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, and this is a little bit different than some of the Tymna Sakashima lists that we've seen floating around out there in the past, which have been some of these bear strategies, slow the game down. This is a Turbo Nas deck. So what is this really doing that's setting itself apart from the rest of the field?
Well, so if we compare it to other Turbo Nas options, Tymna is obviously extremely good as like a backup plan, or if you're not really comfortable just jamming into whatever it is you're facing down, you have I'll just pivot, cast Tymna, draw 3 or 4 cards, and then I'll be set up a few turns down the line whenever I do feel comfortable. And then the other thing is that blue is actually really good. Hot takes.
Turns out.
Hot takes. But yeah, this deck is playing just a ton of super cheap interaction. which makes it very easy for it to protect its own wins, which is something that can be an issue in Mardu or Abzan or like pretty much any Sans Bleu formulation. You know, like if you have the silence, great. You know, you have like the pyroblasts and the deflecting swat that you can sometimes, you know, get there with. And like if we look at this Tymna, this Mardu list, it's running Imp's Mischief, right? Like that's how desperate you are for things that protect your combos. This Esper list is running, you know, Force of Will and Flusterstorm and Dispel.
Force of Negation.
And Force, I mean, that one's not so great for protecting your own combos.
Right.
But yeah, you just have a ton of like really cheap ways of protecting your stuff. One card I did just notice that's a little interesting, at least to me, is Drown in the Lock, which is historically not gone in like decks that are trying to be super proactive. You want to minimize your 2-mana interaction. Generally, you play like Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy if you're in the colors, just because they're insane. And then mana Drain because it gets you back the mana, so it's not really like, you know, yes, it's 2-mana interaction, but it's 2-mana interaction that also does something else for you. So this is, I mean, obviously it's a very flexible card, especially if you're expecting people to wheel a lot. It'll be online quite frequently to kill or counter more or less whatever you want. But it is a little, at least in my mind, a little bit out of place. And then going through, he's got some good, some nice Tymna, you know, synergy pieces that also enable those, you know, your creature synergy speed pieces. We have Changeling Outcast, which is, you know, just unblockable. It's an unblockable 1/1 for 1, so it always gets in for Tymna. Hope of Girapur and Judge's Familiar are both nice because they let you actually proactively protect your combos. And one that I don't think I've seen before, but I'm a huge fan of, is Stonecoil Serpent, which you can cast for 1 of any color, or like if you have, you know, you play Land Soul Ring turn 1, you can even cast it for 2. And most of the stuff that's actively looking to block Tymna attackers is commanders, which tend to be multicolored. And Stonecoil Serpent, of course, has protection for multicolored. So, like, if you're facing down, like, a Thrasios Tymna deck, and they have Mana Dorks, and then, like, Thrasios, you can just attack them, and then they either have to sacrifice a Mana Dork, which generally they don't want to do, or they just have to let it through because they can't stonewall you with Thrasios the way they can with other with other 1/1s on the ground.
And another very important piece with Stonecoil Serpent is it's 0 off of a Naz.
Yes, that is nice. I mean, like, 1 off of a Naz isn't a huge issue. Like, certainly that's like a manageable amount of mana. But, yeah, it being 0 is obviously nice. Contributes to this deck having an average CMC of 1.68 in the non-lands, which is actually, like, even lower than the Mardu version. But yeah, this, and then this list is playing, like, its win con is, it's Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact, no surprises there.
Right.
It's got a Praetor's Grasp, which can theoretically steal redundancy for those pieces if for whatever reason you've lost access, or try and take, you know, potentially a Breach or a Dockside or something like that.
And it looks like it's got that nice Hull Breacher Thief, which we just talked about, you know, on Monday with Smothering Tithe, those little pieces where you can kind of fall back into that Wheels plan if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got 3 wheel payoffs, and then just Time Twister and Windfall. I suppose theoretically you can count Peer as a payoff depending on the I mean, hey, you can peer somebody else with a Notion Thief out. Why not, right? But
and I guess they do lose half their life. That's kind of hilarious.
I mean, yeah, it's not super. It's more just like a cute play. A couple interesting pieces that I think are, you know, good to touch on. There's a Thought Vessel in this deck. That's one that I haven't necessarily seen much of. I guess he's the idea is that, assuming he's not comfortable just jamming ad nauseum or peer, like people are holding up mana and drawing cards, you play Tymna, you play Sakashima as a second Tymna, and then you start drawing a lot of cards pretty fast. Like, even if you can only get in with 2 creatures, that's 4 cards a turn cycle.
Right.
So I guess he's thinking that, these decks historically have run some number of 2-mana rocks anyways. Yes, it doesn't make colored mana, which isn't ideal, but, if you can hold on to like a 10-card hand, that could mean that you have 1 or 2 extra pieces of protection for when you do actually try and go off. So it's kind of a hedge there.
Yeah. And this very interesting list, and it wouldn't be a Cobblepot deck if we weren't having some thoughts about it, right? It's Cobblepot's lists are always very interesting to look at. Up to now, it's going to look like at first, because of the commander, it's the least interesting deck at the table. However, this is what Pongo is playing is a bit of a different version of this list. We've talked about it before. He is playing the first sliver, and he is quite interestingly enough, he's playing what he and Killstars have been working on, this Underworld sliver list. So you obviously are familiar with this from some of the stuff that we've done over on Team Turn 3. What is this list exactly doing that's different from traditional food chain sliver?
So it's actually, like, I think that the more I've been thinking this over, I think that there should no longer be traditional food chain sliver. But yeah, so the idea is that you focus a little bit more on Underworld Breach synergy lines within your food chain sliver shell. So that means we're playing Underworld Breach, we're playing Brain Freeze. The deck was already usually on Lion's Eye Diamond and Lotus Petal, so that wasn't like a huge thing. You play Gamble, which is, I know Shaper's not a big fan of this card. I actually had it in my version of the first sliver for a little while. And then we're also on a couple pieces that are there to increase the speed. So we have like a Phantasmal Image and Orcish Lumberjack for a little more density on the early accelerants. And then they've dropped Mist Hollow Griffin from this list. So what that does is that they dropped Mist Hollow Griffin. They've also dropped pretty much all of the sort of 2 exile tutors. Foresight, Manipulate, Fate, and Extract are all gone. So what this does is it means that your food chains are much less consistent. You're much less likely to have access to the Castrum Exile creature because you're not running those redundant tutors for it. They're also and then you also because you've dropped Mist Hollow Griffin, your success rate on like a blind Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact just to find food chain as a quasi 1-card combo also suffers pretty substantially. I believe that the success rate on that in the first sliver, assuming you didn't have anything useful in hand, was something like 60%. But if you lose one of those Castrum Exile creatures to hit, then that success rate is going to drop by about 10%. But again, they make up for this by having these other Underworld Breach lines that are often, just as fast, and
right.
And like you can often turn a tutor where you would turn your tutor into Demonic Consultation and hope. Now you turn your tutor into Underworld Breach, and then you just kind of get there by recasting the tutor or whatever you need.
Right.
Brain Freeze is also nice because it is an outlet for the first sliver, like the actual food chain combo, assuming none of your opponents don't die to being milled out, which is, I would say, an increasingly safe assumption. You can just get your food chain, cast infinite spells, make your infinite mana by casting creatures infinitely, and then use the first sliver cycle through your deck and Brain Freeze everyone for the win. So they've dropped some of the outlets that deck has typically been on. There's no Jace. There's no hard outlet like, we've seen Goblin Bombardment or like Rift Sweeper to get stuff back. Those are gone, so again, the chances of exiling your win conditions on a blind consult are elevated, which again makes the blind consults worse. But I guess this deck has essentially accepted that it's not playing Consults and Tainted Pact as one-card combos anymore.
Right.
In exchange for having like a much better Nas plan, because Breach dovetails really nicely with Nas, and then just Breach lines in and of themselves.
Awesome. Well, that was our deck list overview brought to you by Moxfield. And so going into this first game, our turn order is Cobblepott going first. Cameron is going to be second at the table, followed by Dylan, and then Pongo. So we're going to start off here with our opening hands here. Pongo is going to be our first hand that we're going to look at here. And Pongo kept a 5-card opening hand of Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, Birds of Paradise, City of Brass, and Bloodstained Mire. So, Spleen, what is your thoughts on that first opening 5 there for Pongo?
Well, it's very straightforward. The idea is that you're going to play the Birds of Paradise on turn 1, and then the Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation on turn 2. This obviously has some upsides and some downsides. Depending on what your opponents are doing, if there's any sort of interaction, you have the potential to be in a really rough spot. Like if Demonic Consultation gets countered here, you basically have no cards in hand. You have you've drawn whatever your first 2 draws are, and then I guess you get a Thassa's Oracle trigger for 2. And then you're sitting there on 3 mana, and that's not a great spot. So there are some interesting possibilities here. First, if you cast the Demonic Consultation first, people might think you're trying to set up a food chain. They might let it resolve because, they're like, oh, I can counter food chain or whatever it is. And then you can, this is a list that gives you a lot of plausible deniability on having the Oracle in hand, right? It's like you cast it and people go, oh, come on, there's no way. He doesn't have the mana for food chain, and they think, oh, I bet he's holding the Mana Crypt or the Lotus Petal or whatever it is. And it's like, actually, no, I'm holding the Thassa's Oracle. And then Thassa's Oracle is obviously a lot harder to counter than Demonic Consultation. There is also the possibility of you actually just Demonic Consultation for food chain, although I'm not super sold on that. It would certainly be heavily draw dependent. But yeah, I will say though that this hand definitely doesn't look suspicious, right? Like you play, he's on 5, which means that your standards for what's a keepable hand are starting to drop because going to 4 and 3 is brutal. So
less than ideal.
If someone went turn 1 land birds, I mean, I wouldn't be suspicious if that was their 7, but if that was their 5, I would go okay, yeah, sure. They have land birds, and then next turn they're going to play a land, maybe another dork, maybe they'll, tutor for something or whatever. So it's certainly not a hand that looks like it's trying to win on turn 2.
Right. Absolutely. Up next in the turn order is Dylan. He kept a 7-card opening hand. His 7 was Phyrexian Tower, Cabal Ritual, Vampiric Tutor, Ad Nauseam, Verdant Catacombs, Diabolic Intent, and Chrome Mox. So for a 7, what do you think of that 7? I don't know if that was his first 7 or his second 7, to be fair. But what are your thoughts on that?
It looks a little bit awkward. Because you have this Phyrexian Tower and Diabolic Intent, and you don't have a creature, right? So if you want to enable either of them, you're looking at casting Tymna, which is definitely not great. That being said, you do have the Nas, so I could see this hand doing something like, I mean, you can go for a turn 2 Nas with this hand, just pitch the Diabolic Intent under the Chrome Mox, or if you draw something you'd rather pitch, you can do that. But essentially, you're just going to you can, if you Vampiric Tutor for Crypt turn 1, then you can play the Ad Nauseam on turn 2, just off the Cabal Ritual, which actually lets you hold the Chrome Mox for post-Naz, which is even better. Or you could play it up front. So this is a turn 2 Naz hand, but it's definitely not like a great one, and, like, non-active Cabal Rituals don't feel good, and the fact that your second land is a Phyrexian Tower is not great. This hand, if you want to be, if you are on the Tymna plan, and you don't draw something that you can pitch to Chrome Mox, you kind of have to fetch a white-black land, which means that you're totally at the mercy of drawing red if you ever need it, which is certainly not ideal. But
right.
if you do go for the greedy line, you can play a turn 2 Naz with a Chrome Mox already in hand, which is very likely to be a successful win, assuming it's not interacted with, and decently likely to not be interacted with, because it's turn 2 and all you did turn 1 was play a land and pass.
Right. Up next in the turn order, going second, is Cam. He did keep a 6-card opening hand. His 6 was Vexing Shusher, Volcanic Island, Exotic Orchard, Seedborn Muse, Windswept Heath, and Priest of Titania. So this is something you've had a little bit of experience with on our channel, Spleenface, is the Priest of Titania without other elves in the hand. So what is it you think of this opening 6?
This opening 6 is definitely not where I would want to be as Cam in this pod. You're playing land, then probably land priest. You're hoping you don't die turn 2, which is not insanely optimistic, but somewhat optimistic. Like, I mean, Cobble can kill you on turn 3 before you untap from playing your priest. But the other 2 would have to kill you on turn 2, so, decently likely to not die. But even then, you're untapping. If we're optimistic and say that Pongo's playing an elf, you can cast your Thrasios and hold up, like, if you hit the land, 3 mana. I suppose you could cast Seedborn Muse and not Thrasios. Or maybe the play is Vexing Shusher if you draw interaction, but if you, like, you're not really getting to the point where you want to be, where you have the Thrasios, you have the interaction, and things like that until turn 4 at the absolute earliest. And so I think that this hand is... So and I mean, the hand doesn't even have the interaction to begin with, right? So and like the decks that you're sitting down with are not decks that you can count on to be stopping each other. This deck is always going to have a hard time in this pod. Just, one person playing police and 3 people, one police officer trying to chase down 3 people at the same time, who all run in different directions. But going to 5 is probably not going to be better. So I certainly understand why this hand was kept. And with a couple decent draws, this hand could definitely, yes, it's probably not online until around turn 4, but that turn 4 is that's a Thrasios Seedborn Muse, possibly Vexing Shusher, hand, which is like very online.
Well, we'll see how that goes. But going first in the turn order is Cobblepott. He also kept 6 cards for his opening hand, and his opening hand was a Gitaxian Probe, Chain of Vapor, Chrome Mox, Serra Ascendant, Felwar Stone, and Flooded Strand. So as far as this Esper farm list, how does this opening hand fare for first 6?
Well, so it's a little awkward because because you're going first, you can't play land Chrome Mox, Felwar Stone, Serra Ascendant on turn 1. Which, first world problems and all that. But, it actually, if you want to develop your Tymna on turn 2, which presumably you do, that means that you're not playing the Felwar Stone. If you go Serra Ascendant turn 1, that actually means you're not playing the Felwar Stone until turn 3 at the earliest, which, at that point, this is we're bordering on the point where we're considering this like a 5-card hand, especially because if you want to cast Sakashima instead, then it's, you're delaying it till turn 4. So this hand doesn't curve out in a way that lets you cleanly include the Felwar Stone, which is a little unfortunate. Like if that was one of the white talismans, for example, or an arcane signet, then this hand would be great, because you just go land, Chrome Mox, put the probe or the Chain of Vapor under it, whichever you feel like. Cast your 2-mana rock, cast your Serra Ascendant, and then next turn you're casting Tymna, drawing a card, and still have mana up, assuming you hit a land in one of your 3 draws. But we can't do that, so I think you still probably lead with Serra Ascendant, because yes, getting your mana online is good, but it's not like you have a Naz or something that you're building to. It's also possible to fire off the probe early to sort of figure out how you want to play this. Maybe look at look at Dylan's hand, try and see how fast he's looking to win, or look at Cam's to see, if there's a bunch of interaction, maybe you just play it slow. You play your Ascendant, you start beating down the Naz decks, and you let Cam hold down the fort against them while you draw cards. But if he actually does that and sees Cam's hand, that's actually, that's not a plan that's going to work out super well. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what path he takes, or if he chooses to hold the probe, until maybe turn 2 or possibly even later, to figure out, is he going to save it until he's trying to go off to check for interaction? Or it is getting pitched to the Chrome Mox and he values Chain of Vapor more than probe, which is also a possibility.
Absolutely. Well, before we jump into this, we're going to take a quick timeout, and we'll be right back here with some more Mind Sculptors gameplay series. Welcome everybody back to the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. I'm Callahan, that's Spleenface, and we've got a great one lined up for you. We just got done looking at the deck lists and the opening hands, so it's time to go into the gameplay here. So let's go ahead and jump on in. And so starting off here, like we said, is Cobblepott. So, it's going to be interesting here, like you said here in the pregame, is he going to be going for the Serra Ascendant? What is he going to put under this Chrome Mox? And we're going to really see what he goes for here.
Yeah, this is okay. So he's immediately launching the probe. Do we know who this is targeting?
He's targeting Cameron.
He's targeting Cameron. So this is, I think I like this play. Because Cameron is sort of like what we see from Cameron is really what's going to be determining how Cobble wants to play this game. Oh, and he's actually okay. No, they're looking away. For a second, I thought he was, sharing with the class.
Yeah.
So I think that this is actually a hand that Cobble will not be super happy to see from Cam, because he doesn't have seeing that the shields are down. He's not really in a great position to take advantage of that, unless he drew. Obviously, if he draws a way to find the Naz or something, then that'll be great for him.
Chain of Vapor is under the Chrome Mox, so it did look like he valued, like you were saying in the pregame, looks like he valued that hand information over that Chain of Vapor. He is cracking the Flooded Strand here. More than likely getting an Underground Sea, I would presume.
So, I guess...
Well, no, maybe not, because you might want to be putting out that
Serra Ascendant, then this won't be an Underground Sea. It's actually possible it could be a Scrubland, which is it feels surprising to say, but he has the blue from the Chrome Mox, and his hand, it's not like he has a lot of use for extra blue mana. It is, in fact, the Scrubland. So yeah, the other issue is that unless he hit a land off the Chrome Mox or as his draw for turn, he might just be forced to cast the Felwar Stone because he doesn't have the turn. He can't cast him on turn 2 without a land. I guess if he does hit the land,
And
then
there's
he
the
can.
Felwar.
Yeah, if he does hit the land, he can cast Timna and the Ascendant on turn 2, which means he's not drawing his first card until turn 3. But it does mean that he curves out like much nicer than if he wanted to get the Ascendant out on turn 2, or sorry, on turn
Absolutely.
1, and then Timna on turn 2. But yeah, the classic Felwar Stone doesn't make mana when you're going first.
First turn problems, right?
Exactly.
Well, Cam has the turn, and he's going to play that Windswept Teeth and pass the turn. And presumably he didn't really draw anything very interesting. He passed over onto Dylan.
Well, so what he didn't draw was a Mana Elf, which is like the thing that he more than anything desperately wants to draw here. Right? If he'd drawn even just Llanowar Elves, then that means that his turn 2, he's playing Priest and still holding up a mana, which at least looks like he might have some interaction. And then on his turn 3, he has 6 mana, 2 from the Priest, 1 from the Elf, and then 3 from his lands. But with no Elf, that means he's going Shields down on turn 2 and is only looking at 4 mana on turn 3. Which is definitely rough, especially when you're at a table with 3 fast decks.
Absolutely. Dylan did get, we had a little bit of technical difficulties there with some camera delay, but he did fetch up use his Verdant Catacombs to fetch up a Badlands, and we'll see exactly what he's going to be firing off here. He has a Chrome Mox of his own, and I wonder what he's going to be imprinting here. Putting the Diabolic Intent underneath of it.
I mean, this does make sense, right? His hand just doesn't have a creature. This is an interesting, a very interesting sort of line from him. Casting the Chrome Mox here plays around a few things, but I think that those things are actually somewhat unlikely. I think if Cobble had a fish, we would have seen it, right?
Right.
Like if Cobble had a fish, he would play the Chrome Mox and then put the fish out, play a land, and then next turn he can pay for the fish, play a land, cast the Felwar Stone, and then he has a fish and he's holding up mana on turn 2, which is like pretty great, especially into this pod. Fish is likely to draw a lot of cards or really slow down the development.
Right.
So really this plays around, and like Cam just played a land and passed, so he doesn't have a fish, right? Let's be real here.
Right.
So this plays around like pretty much exactly Pongo having a fish or like a super early wheel, both of which I don't think are particularly likely. So all this does is it makes him look scarier.
Right.
Like, because it doesn't let him cast anything that he... I mean, I guess now he can cast the Cabal Ritual, but he doesn't have anything to do with it, so... I think that this was actually...
Paradise... Excuse me. Yep. Birds of Paradise and a Bayou off of that Bloodstained Mire from Pongo, which we expected. There's the Serra Ascendant from Cobblepott, and he is also going to be playing a Changeling Outcast, so he did draw that either last turn or the turn before. And that's a card that we're used to seeing in Yuriko. What is it doing in this Timna Sakashima list?
I mean, it's drawing cards. It's not dealing as much damage, and it's less likely to be returned to your hand. But it's an unblockable 1/1, and 1 power is all you need to trigger Timna. Or to, count for Timna. So notably, he didn't hit a land off any of his 3 draws, which is definitely unfortunate. Though admittedly, he certainly gets some compensation in the form of this Changeling Outcast, because he has basically 3 more draws to hit a land, right? He can, on turn 3, play Timna, attack 2 people, draw 2 cards, and then, if he doesn't hit a land, then he has an excuse for why he lost this game. Drew 6 cards and didn't find a second land. I mean, so unlucky, right? So like this is making the most of sort of a bad scenario of missing that second land drop.
Right. Well, Cam, there at the end step, fetches up a Windswept Heath, and it's tapped. And I still think we're working around a few technical issues, potentially. No, he was just shuffling his deck. I do remember hearing from Pongo during the recording of this that Dylan and Cam did have a few connection issues. But here we are over to Cameron's turn. He does play the Volcanic Island, that full art proxy that he's got. I love those that they use. And a Grim Monolith. Okay, so
Monolith. That's an interesting one.
It is a little bit better than the Priest of Titania on this turn, I would say.
Yeah, especially with the Seedborn Muse in his hand, because obviously Seedborn Muse actually just untaps it.
Right.
For free. So this is like he can use it next turn, jam the Seedborn Muse. Unfortunately, he can't also cast the Thrasios, which is probably sad. Okay, looks like
that's a big sad there.
Okay, I actually really like this play. I think this is heads up from Cobble. We saw the Vamp in the end step from Dylan, and Cobble recognizing that he probably wouldn't be able to counter whatever Dylan was going to do. Just straight up countered the Vampire Tutor with the Mental Misstep, which like absolutely buys them a turn here. Now, he might be a little sad when Pongo casts his Demonic Consultation, but he might wish he'd taken his chances. But
based on what is going on, I would say that was also a fine play, from my opinion. But Dylan here with his turn, and I'm hearing some oh no's from over there. I'm wondering if Dylan didn't hit a land drop. He hit a Phyrexian Tower.
Okay. That was in his opener.
That's right.
But it's obviously not the land drop you want to hit. Also, notably, okay, we hit a Jeweled Lotus. I was about to say, notably, this hand doesn't actually make white mana and can't cast Tymna, but there's a Jeweled Lotus.
Now it can.
So I guess I'm full of it. So this is actually, I think I know what's about to happen here, and it's Callahan. It's your special. We're gonna see a Tymna.
The Callahan special.
The Callahan special. We're gonna see a Tymna, and then we're gonna cast a Jessica, and we're going to definitely reset some board states here. So, yeah, like this gets to take out. Unfortunately, it does not get to take out the Sarah Ascendant because Cobblepot's life total is sufficiently high. But it does get to take out the Outcast and the Birds.
Which does take Pongo back a turn.
Yeah, which means Pongo's not winning here. Cobblepot's looking at drawing one card, not two. Or he might actually decide that he wants that Jessica gone. Like he values that more than a card. So yeah, this will be interesting.
So he's to Pongo's face. Okay. So he deals with the bird, the Changeling Outcast, and one to Pongo's face.
Okay, I definitely don't... okay, so the targeting here is interesting. I think that normally I would say Cobblepot is the better target. His deck is more likely to be focused around Ad Nauseam. He didn't mulligan to 5, and he's obviously like in a much better position than Pongo is here. But the counterpoint is that obviously, like, this Sarah Ascendant is quickly
he has a
going
Sarah
to make
Ascendant
that completely irrelevant. So yeah, the way this game is shaping up, it looks like
a Get Probe from Pongo, and that is targeting Cobblepot.
Yeah. Okay. So
Swords to Plowshares is the only card in hand.
So yeah, like we're seeing everyone's threats sort of being pushed back or outright countered. I guess Dylan does still have the Nas. Like the tutor was finding a ritual to cast it faster. So assuming he can find one more mana somehow, like through a land or a rock, he is still looking at a potential Nas next turn.
Now the mana base for Pongo is getting a little odd. He had a Bayou there, the City of Ass, and the Elvish Mystic. And so that does kind of move him away from getting on that Thassa's Oracle DC plan earlier.
Well, so he needs a blue or a black source, which is like pretty much any land in the deck will get him there.
And the Sarah Ascendant is going to be attacking Pongo here.
I just heard Pongo say, "You don't want to attack Dylan," and I have to admit, I'm kind of asking the same question here. I think that this attack seems a little bit misplaced here. Dylan's obviously just closer to casting an Ad Nauseam, and also his deck is more focused around Ad Nauseam. Now the one thing that I think might be the factor here is that Dylan goes directly after Cam. So if Cam is going to be countering one Ad Nauseam, it's probably going to be Dylan's. And so
Crom from Cam.
Crom from Cam, yeah. This will also put some pressure on. We'll see who this goes at.
He is attacking the Jeska.
Attacking the Jeska. Okay, that's an interesting play because, like, yes, it makes the really all it's doing here is tripling the damage output of the Tymna. Like, I guess it can. Well, I guess maybe he's thinking at some point he's going to play this Priest of Titania and he doesn't want it to immediately die to Jeska.
Right.
But it feels like he could have done this later because realistically he wants Dylan to be attacking for 6 here, right? Like, there's no world where Dylan ever attacks him. And so, like, just tripling the damage here is actually pretty good. Although, right. I guess maybe he's thinking that also triples the life gain, and he'd rather Dylan's life total be lower than either of Cobble or Pongo's.
Dylan did swing at Pongo there, gained 2 life, I believe he drew that Gemstone Caverns, and that is a sad Gemstone Caverns.
Well, I mean, you know, and like any,
it's not as sad as the Gemstone.
I'm not coming up with the right pun, but that is like that lets him cast Ad Nauseam, right? You know,
that's true.
So like this is certainly like any mana here means that he can go Cabal Ritual Ad Nauseam, which is exactly what he wants to be doing. Now, maybe he passes. We do see an open mana from Cam, and Cam hasn't played any interaction.
He is passing the turn here.
He's passing. I guess he can also try and go for it at instant speed, possibly in Cobble's end step would be a good time if either of Pongo or Cobble can sort of draw. If they play something that it looks like he would want to interact with.
Mana Vault from Pongo here after a Watery Grave.
Okay, that's not bad, but it actually doesn't really matter.
And there's a Thassa's Oracle.
I don't think I like this sequencing. I think that there is a world where the consult resolves if you cast it first.
And Demonic Consultation in response to the trigger, there it is.
Sorry, like there's a world where someone lets you resolve it. Okay, it probably would have gotten Mental Misstepped anyways, because Mental Misstep is, like, it doesn't counter Food Chain, obviously.
Right.
So I guess he's not really punished for his sequencing here. But if that had been like a swan song, if I was Cam, I could see myself letting it go. There's a chance that it's a whiff. And like Cam, you know, really desperately wants to hold any interaction he has here.
Right.
Because he's certainly walking a razor's edge between these 3 decks.
Now he is gonna start drawing some cards. He did draw an extra card there off of that Thassa's Oracle and the DC in the Mana Vault there. And we are seeing the Sarah Ascendant attacking into Dylan from Cobblepott, and Tymna is going after Cam. And Pongo is presumably, his Nas strategy is pretty depleted as every turn passes, I would assume.
Well, the counterpoint is that he is on 7 mana, which means that it is incredibly easy for him to win off a Nas.
Right.
Right? Like, if he just casts Nas with 2 mana up, then like hitting any piece of fast mana of food chain and a cast from exile creature is a win. Dockside is actually surprisingly not fat for these decks.
Yeah,
it's actually it'd be 4 for Pongo. I think it'd be 4 for everyone except Cobble, for whom it would be 3. Well, okay.
Now it's getting bigger. There's a 1/1 stone.
Or sorry, 5s and 3s. 5s and 3. But yeah, like certain
this stone coil serpent. We were talking about this in the pregame. Not to interrupt you there, but this is going to do some work in making this Crom not be able to come through and hit Cobblepott.
Yeah, that is a possibility to just hold it back as a blocker. I think that with the Serra Ascendant and him being on 46 life, if I'm Cobblepot here and I can draw 3 cards a turn rather than 2 cards a turn, I'm doing that.
Right.
At least until I take maybe 3 hits from the Crom, and then I start worrying about commander damage. But in this, right, like Crom's going to hit him, not going to hit him here. If he swings out with it next turn, Crom's going to hit him down to like 48. Or maybe 45 because he's drawing off Timna or whatever. But, you know, something like that. It's going to hit him down to the mid-40s, which is more than enough.
Well, it is Cam's turn. He still has that Grim Monolith tapped. One notable thing is Cobblepot did finally find that second land.
He sure did.
In the Thrasios comes down for Cam. And casting a Training Grounds.
Okay, so if he can... This is sort of an interesting line here. I think I would have preferred the Priest, because it gives him... Oh, I guess he would still be 1 mana short, barring another dork from someone, of casting Thrasios and the Muse next turn. But
right.
Looks like we're getting an end-step Naz. Now, this is a 30-life Naz, but it's also an end-step Naz. So I definitely like his chances. If this resolves, I would not feel remotely good if I was one of his opponents about him not being able to win here.
And Adnaz is coming down. It looks like he is not going to sacrifice the Timna.
Yeah, there's almost no reason to. Like, what, you're playing around Force Spike?
Right. Pongo Cobble Pass. Cam does draw the card, and he has a Force of Negation for the Ad Nauseam.
Looks like a Fierce Guardianship, but...
Or Fierce... Yeah, that one.
It still gets the job done. That's the important thing. So
it's one of those free counter spells that we have an abundance of now.
Yeah, so if I'm Cam, I'm actually super happy with how this game is playing out. Because he started with no interaction. Pongo's pretty dead in the water. I think, if I'm counting cards correctly, he's actually hellbent. And now Dylan's had his Vamp Tutor countered, he's exiled his Diabolic Intent, and now his Ad Nauseam hasn't resolved. So that was basically like... That was, all of his plans. So now he sort of has to start from square one and draw himself into...
He is presumably going to... He can't even... And the problem with this table, and this is probably where Cam has played this out fairly well, is that Crom does a good job of making sure that the Jessica can't come down and give that Timna some value and get him back in the game, as some episodes that I've done that where I've been, gone for the win, and you get stopped, and then Timna and Jessica come out, and then you just kind of get back into the game eventually. Dylan's not gonna have that luxury in this game because of that Crom.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Cam does with his future combat steps. Crom is like so satisfying to swing with, but particularly when there's 2 Timnas out, it's often correct not to. Now he may just be thinking that it doesn't actually change the math, because I think what's going to happen here is that the Stone Coil Serpent will go at Cam, and the Ascendant will go at I guess if Dylan's attacking, then the Ascendant will go at Cobble, and the Timna will go at Dylan, and Cobble's drawing his 3 cards.
A potential misplay there from Dylan as he forgot about the Thassa's Oracle's power and toughness as he swung the Tymna in over at Pongo. And now he's pretty wide open to attacks.
But, I mean,
as,
realistically...
Pongo drops a first sliver.
Realistically, I don't think he was trading... I don't think he was ever trading Tymnas with Cobble.
Right.
Because Cobble has the mana to recast his. And... okay, so we've got a Noxious off the first sliver for Cobblepot. Or, sorry, for Pongo. It looks like it's targeting Demonic Consultation. This will be interesting to see... Oh.
There is going to be a Crom trigger because of the first sliver cast and the the Cascade cast.
So, Cobble can definitely... Or sorry, I keep saying Cobble. Pongo can definitely try and win next turn with this. The odds aren't great. The Thassa's Oracle in play is awkward for food chain lines.
Especially with a deck that's not on Jace.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could spend a while going through this list and trying to figure out. Oh my goodness!
Imps Mischief on the Noxious Revival, and
Cam just gets happier and happier. So this will be interesting. I think Pongo and Cam could sort of come to a bit of an agreement. Well, I guess this Stonecoil Serpent might just be forced to stay back now, because if it goes attacking, then he actually starts taking. Look, like if he's taking Crom, Tymna, and the first sliver, that is in fact 13 damage a turn cycle, which quite comfortably outpaces the Ascendant.
Right.
So maybe now this is actually staying back on defense, which does mean that Cobble's drawing one less card a turn, which is nice. It'd be a little nicer if they could actually pressure him down, so his Nazas weren't quite so consistent. Like, Pongo's almost down to 20, Dylan's down to 30. So getting Cobble down there too would probably be nice if I was in Cam's shoes.
Cobble is going to be fetching here for it looks like he got a Hollowed Fountain there on the end step. And so now what we're going to be getting from Cobblepot as he goes to his draw step and his turn. Let's see what we get from him. This has very much been a game that has probably turned out for Cam the best of everybody, honestly.
Yeah, when I looked at his opening hand, I went, so this game's just going to end on turn 2 or 3, right? Like, he doesn't have interaction, they're all just going to jam, and it's going to end badly. But Cobble stopped the Vamp, which meant Dylan couldn't Naz on turn 2, which meant that he played Jessica killing the birds, which meant Pongo couldn't Consult on turn 2. And that's
it started a chain reaction.
Yeah, that actually worked out really well.
And Cobble is going to swing with the Stonecoil Serpent. And so he is opening himself up, but he's clearly trying to draw some cards.
Yeah, and this also like, it's good for Cam also because now people, because they spent their interaction on each other, they're now that, like Cobble spent his, or Dylan, like spent his Imps Mischief stopping Pongo's, Consult attempt, or like attempt to put Consult back on top and things like that. So most of the win attempts that we're seeing have been unprotected, which means
probably continue to be unprotected.
Oh, Smothering Tithe. Okay, so this will make
Smothering Tithe from Cobble is going to be beneficial.
I mean, it'll make him a lot of mana, unless he specifically has like a way to find Naz. I don't know if that's what he needs here. But I mean, certainly this means that like basically any gas is something he's likely to be able to turn into a win.
Right.
Yeah, so we've seen all these unprotected win attempts, and like even a deck like Mad Farm has about as many interactive pieces as it has sort of like must counter type cards.
Interestingly here, not to cut you off, but Cam is hitting Dylan for 4 in the air, and that is presumably going to be going after that ad nauseum that is on the top of his deck, trying to make the ad nausea as bad as possible.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty reasonable. It's also like if I'm Dylan into 4 open mana and a Thrasios plus Training Grounds, I don't know if I could ever bring myself to sacrifice my Tymna to jam an ad nauseum.
Yeah, that's
especially one that everyone knows about, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Rite of Flame from
Flame.
Dylan.
So this does mean he doesn't have to sacrifice the Tymna. Actually, no, it doesn't mean that at all.
He still needs double black.
Yeah. Oh, I think he's okay. We're taking that one back because I think he came to the realization that he still needs double black at the same time as we did.
It is a little bit awkward.
Oh,
I think he's.
I guess he's committing to it.
Yeah, I think what he's decided is he committed it to the board, and it's too late.
Now I think I confess I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is that as long as you haven't received any information from your opponents, which would even be as simple as like, they passed priority,
right,
or like they had a visible reaction, he could actually take that back even at
right.
like a tournament.
And a miscast from Cobblepott there.
Yeah,
man,
so
Dylan has just bad beats for this farm deck all game so far.
Yeah.
And another Crom Trigger. And Cam's game keeps getting better and better as the game progresses. And this was kind of something that we talked about earlier, is that if Cam gets past a certain point in the turn, or in the turn cycles, the game starts to slowly swing toward in his favor the longer the game goes.
So if we make it through Cobblepott's turn here, then I really like Cam's position, because I think if I were him, I'd be very comfortable just jamming the Seedborn Muse. There's very few pieces of interaction. Okay, now I'm even more comfortable.
Swords on the first sliver. Wow. Everybody's been doing Cam's work for him this game.
I really don't like this play. Like, Pongo clearly has nothing going on.
And recasting the first
see
sliver.
Him recast and get another Cascade trigger. And, like, if you're actually worried about being killed, you just leave the Stonecoil Serpent back.
Arbor Elf off of the first sliver. And Cam gets another draw. The first sliver feels really bad going into a Crom.
Yeah, there's honestly a world where I'd consider not even casting the Dork as Pongo. Like, he has... Yeah, I guess he can... He can... Like, this does make... If he does draw Nas, this does help him out.
Right.
But, yeah, he's in a pretty rough spot. And I think that the Swords... Like, it's nice as a hedge. First of all, I'd much rather just go after the Crom generally.
Right. I mean, that Crom's drawn at least 6 cards so far this game.
Yeah. Like, it is a little bit less damage, but it is just way more... the fact that it's drawing him cards is way more threatening, I think, than the 3 extra power on the sliver.
Right.
And also, if he'd held it, I mean, it would have been a perfect answer to the Seedborn Muse. That's likely to come from Cam. Which, obviously, he doesn't know about, but... Like, this is...
We have the benefit of knowing.
No, but, I mean, this is certainly a Seedborn Muse Thrasios deck, right? Like, we're seeing a Training Grounds in play. This is a very mid-range deck. So, even if you don't know what's in his hand, you know that there's a decent chance that one of the things this deck wants to do is jam a Seedborn Muse.
And we are seeing Cobblepott hit in some more face. He's up to 55 life, and he's drawing 3 cards off of that Tymna, and still gaining 3 life because that good old... actually, no, he's gaining 5 life because of the Tymna. And, man, he is really... Cobblepott, if he manages to find something in these cards, he's really set up to really run away with it.
Yeah, and I mean, so if the sliver had connected here, he'd be at 45. Like, is that so low that he thinks his Nas won't work?
Dark Ritual from Cobblepott here.
So is this a
and let's see what's going on. And it looks like the table is allowing the Dark Ritual to resolve 3 back mana into his mana pool.
I actually don't think I like this.
Notion Thief.
Okay, I really don't like this then. I think that, like, he has so much mana that it really isn't an issue. And if he'd cast the Notion Thief, then there's no Crom draw here.
Mana drain on the Notion Thief from Cam. And Cam is going to get a free Thassa's Oracle activation if it resolves, but it looks like it might not because of the Fierce Guardianship.
Also, it would be 2 Thrasios activations because he's got that Training Grounds, right? But
that is true.
What it would actually let him do, which would be huge, is cast the Thassa's Oracle and that Vexing Cheshire that's been stuck in his hand all game in the same turn. Or sorry,
Priest of Titania, I believe. Yeah.
No, sorry, the Seedborn Muse.
Seedborn Muse.
He casts Seedborn Muse, he casts Vexing Cheshire, then he untaps with at least 7 mana per turn cycle Training Grounds Thrasios. But Fierce Guardianship says no.
And a windfall from Cobblepot. And nobody has anything.
No, Slaughter Pact doesn't do it. This is looking pretty good.
It looks like Cobblepot might do something here, and everybody's discarding their hands.
Wow.
And so the Seaborn Mune is gone from Cam.
But check out that hand from Dylan. Jeez. I guess,
wow.
Yeah, so remember when I said, like, 3 turns ago that this hand actually doesn't make white mana? Yeah, he was still running into that issue. Because otherwise he could E-tutor for, like LED or Petal and then try and do breach things, but...
yeah.
No white mana.
And presumably Cobblepot is going to win here.
Yeah.
This feels like a win. You're drawing 28 cards.
It might actually be more than that. I think there's a decent chance that Cam has 8 or 9 cards.
I guess this isn't a twister. That's fair.
We'll see. We'll see when he stops counting.
$29.
32
32 cards. So like it was good grief.
An 8-card hand from Cam. Man, what a Nambo, right? He just cast Windfall of Smothering Tide, made 0 treasures.
Those darn replacement effects. Well, Cobblepot now has 32 cards in hand, so he might as well have cast Peer into the Abyss, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And he got to
7 mana, draw 32. This has the added benefit of it also mind twists your opponents, which is fun.
Which is nice.
Him, not anyone else, but...
Well, yeah. So let's see what he's got here this turn. It looks like he's got a Mox Opal there, which certainly is what you want to see. Mana Crypt, he's getting the acceleration, which is good news for Cobblepot and bad news for the rest of the table.
I mean, I think that this is largely just a formality, right? Like...
Mox Diamond.
Even if he somehow couldn't win this turn, which I seriously doubt.
Soul Ring.
We're winning.
Good grief. Mana Vault, Soul Ring.
Yeah, so I do kind of wonder about, remember, like when he cast the Thrasios, and I said I think I would have liked the Priest. If he'd cast the Priest, then this might have meant that he could have had Vexing Cheshire in play. Obviously, like, this is, hindsight, and I knew stuff about people's hands and things like that.
Right.
But I think that, like, it's, it's hard not for me to look at that hand and not want to develop the mana, especially after Pongo actually played an elf, so the Priest was not just, like, a really bad mana dork.
Right.
but yeah, like, you know, he had one piece of interaction for Cobble, but Cobble's been drawing 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 cards a turn cycle for 3 or 4 turns now, so it's not surprising that he had protection for his win attempt.
And Tainted Pact from Cobblepott, and so this tells me he, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he's probably going Tainted Pact to Thassa's Oracle.
That's certainly a possibility. He may just have the Thassa's Oracle in his hand, and this is just going down to, you know, 2 or 3 cards in his library. He may just be getting it. It would be a little surprising. Maybe he has Consult, so he's getting Thassa's Oracle. There are a lot of things this could be. And all of them are very bad if you're one of Cobblepot's opponents.
Yeah, Time Twister was not in the hand, though, so that is interesting. So the ability to Time Twist again and do this all over again is kind of gone. But I don't think it matters. There's a Thassa's Oracle. And I am assuming he more than likely has Demonic Consultation in the hand.
He's almost there just naturally. Oh, okay. Does he see the style points play?
The style
points play is you cast Thassa's Oracle, and then you cast Sakashima copying the Thassa's Oracle. And, boo. Alright.
I guess like, that does it there.
It looked like he only had 4 cards in his library. Maybe that was wild. Just... Maybe I was misseeing when he fanned it out, but it looked like 4 cards to me.
Right.
Which would have been, because you get 2 devotion from the Thassa's Oracle, 2 devotion from the Sakashima, and 1 from the Notion Thief. But you know what? Demonic Consultation works.
It absolutely does. And we'll be right back after this. As you saw there, Cobblepott took that first game. We got one more game right after this lined up for you. So stick around. You're watching the Mind Sculptors gameplays. And welcome everybody back to the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. I'm Callahan, that's Spleen. And Spleen, we just saw a great, pretty interesting game kind of play out there where Cobblepott ended up being able to basically mind rot or mind twist the table, draw 32 cards, which is astounding, and win off of that Thassa's Oracle. So, you know, looking forward here into this game too, before we really step into these opening hands and take a look at them, what are some things, you know, just a kind of brief recap and what we saw there in that first game?
So, I mean, certainly that game lasted a lot longer than I would have expected. We saw 2 hands with very obvious early wins, but they both, and the player who you'd expect to sort of play police a little bit, didn't start with the tools necessary to perform that role. But luckily, people had like just enough interaction to slow the game down. And Cam, you know, clawed his way back into it. But Cobble had spent several turns with that Sarah Ascendant and that Timna, and he was just drawing a few too many cards. And that wound up being more or less overwhelming. And I mean, that's, at least there was certainly, like, more than one person had a go of it. It wasn't just one person, you know, all right, I cast my win on turn 2. And nobody does anything. All right, good talk. Let's go home, everyone. And yeah, it would have been interesting to see how things might have played out, you know, like, would one more turn cycle have been enough to to get Cam what he needed to stop Cobble from winning. And, you know, if he had, would somebody else have been able to sort of claw their way back in? But you know, it was definitely a good game, and
absolutely
involved. Everyone was relevant at the very least, which is always what you want to see.
And even with Dylan's, you know, kind of spinning his wheels there a lot. I mean, he attempted to go for it at least 3 times in that game, and you know, it was dealt with every time. But you know, he put a pretty good foot forward trying to get that going.
Certainly did, yeah.
Well, here as we go into the second game here in our doubleheader, the turn order will be Pongo going first, Cobblepott going second, third is going to be Cam, and unfortunately Dylan is going to be last there on that Timna Jessica list, which is pretty much the worst place that farm list can find itself, is sitting there at the end of that table, I would say.
I mean, that's true of any deck. I think that actually the decks that it's worst for would be a deck more like Cam's, something that's a little bit slower, where,
right,
like if Cam's general game plan involves tapping out on turn 2, the later he is in the turn order, the harder that becomes, right? Because then you're tapping out going into someone's turn 3. And that's where these decks start being able to deliver actually, like turn 2 wins happen, but many decks can reasonably consistently pull off turn 3 wins. So if you're tapped out for, as Cam will be, for 2 of your opponent's turn 3s, assuming you tap out on turn 2, that's definitely a little risky of a position to play from. But yeah, Dylan obviously going last and also being the only person to mulligan to 6 is certainly not starting. It's not an auspicious start to this game.
Yeah. And, you know, going off of that, like you said, here is the opening hands for this second game. We're going to start off with Dylan, and like Spleen said, he did keep a 6-card opening hand. His opening hand was pretty good, though. He had a Godless Shrine, a Jewel Lotus, a Cloudstone Curio, Mana Vault, Praetor's Grasp, and Yawgmoth's Will. So there's a few awkward pieces there, but the Jeweled Lotus is definitely what you want to be seeing, right?
I mean, yes, obviously, turn 1 Timna, pretty good. But the rest of this hand, I think, leaves more than just something. It actually leaves a lot to be desired. Yawgmoth's Will is reasonably dead here unless we're finding... Like, if we find a tutor that finds us Lion's Eye Diamond, maybe we can try and make something happen there. Cloudstone Curio, again, we don't have a bottom for, like, a Dockside combo unless we're actually thinking we can pull it off with Timna, and also we don't have the Dockside itself. We only have a single colored mana source. Mana Vault doesn't untap, and also we can't play it on turn 1 if we're casting the Timna because we need 2 colors.
Right.
And this hand, like his last one, is short a color. This time it's red, not white, but that does mean that if he draws potentially useful red cards, he won't be able to cast them unless he finds another source. And Praetor's Grasp being double black is also really not where you want to be. So I think this hand, especially going last, is going to be relying on this Timna to do a lot of work. And we'll see how that plays out.
That looks like a Callahan mid-rangey special there for you.
But I mean, okay, I hope he doesn't play Mana Vault on turn 2 and then cast Jessica with the Mana Vault, because I think that's just consigning yourself to not winning this game. If you tap that Mana Vault for a Jessica, then I think your position is pretty brutal.
Absolutely. Well, going up next in the turn order is his teammate Cam, who did keep a 7-card opening hand. He kept a Boreal Druid, a Wooded Foothills, a Grim Monolith, Mana Confluence, Ponder, Submerge, and Spell Snare. So this looks like it's a little bit better than that last opening hand for Cam.
Yeah, it is. It's still not great. So Boreal Druid's not awesome as a dork because it produces colorless mana, which means if we're casting Thrasios on turn 2, which presumably we are, we're not holding up our Spell Snare or casting our Ponder. Maybe he'll elect to cast the Grim on turn 2. That's a possibility. And then try and lead into a turn 3 Crom. But again, this Ponder's going to be stuck in our hand for a while. The Submerge definitely has the possibility to send Dylan to like the Stone Age or like pre the evolution of humans on the planet. So we'll see. I know that when some content creator groups, it's like, some content creator groups treat their fellow group members nicely. Some actively look for opportunities to stick it to them. So I don't know if that was me and one of my podcast mates, there's a decent chance, especially if Dylan misses that second land drop.
Right.
Then I would see myself being tempted to just tuck that Tymna, and then only have to worry about 2 opponents, especially because Cam is likely to be playing police here. So if he can just say, all right, I only have to police 2 people rather than 3, that would be very appealing. If it was, let's say Cobblepott had if Cobblepott had this Submerge, Cobblepott saying, all right, Cam only has to police 2 people is obviously not nearly as good.
Right.
But if I am Cam, I do actually consider that, especially if Dylan doesn't make that second land drop.
We'll see what he does. Cobblepot is next in the turn order. He does have a 7-card hand as well. His opening 7 was a Godless Shrine, Soul Ring, Thought Vessel, Dark Ritual, Imperial Seal, Ghostly Pilferer. Try saying that 7 times twice. Or what is it, 3 times fast or whatever it is. And also Pact of Negation. So outside of my poor joke there, what do you think of this opening hand from Cobblepot?
This hand is also very awkward. It's missing blue, which is not great. And then we're looking at a conflict of we can't cast our... obviously we want to play land, Soul Ring, 2-mana rock. That's, the classic emergency meeting EDH opener. But we then can't cast our seal. There is a consideration for actually using the Dark Ritual here. You go Godless Shrine, Dark Ritual, Soul Ring, Thought Vessel, Imperial Seal. It's definitely a hard commit, and then I don't know exactly what it is you Imperial Seal for. I think a lot of this actually comes down to what he draws for turn. If he draws a land, especially a land that has the potential to make blue and black mana, then I think I like that play, because then you just, you tutor for whatever, maybe something to win down the line, or possibly even a Tymna attacker of some kind, and then you just curve Tymna into Sakashima, and you have this Ghostly Pilfer, which is obviously a very good Tymna attacker, and you have the colorless mana to feed the Ghostly Pilfer once you've developed your commanders. But if you don't draw a land, then Imperial Sealing and not being able to cast Tymna on turn 2 is certainly not great. So I think if he doesn't draw a land, you just Soul Ring Thought Vessel. But then if you don't draw a land on turn 2 either, that's when things get awkward.
Things will get sticky for sure if he doesn't get that get a land here in the first 2 turns, but we'll see how that goes for him. And going first here in the turn order is, of course, Pongo. He kept a 7-card opening hand as well, and he is going to be keeping a Verdant Catacombs, Tropical Island, Eternal Scourge, Dark Ritual, Imperial Seal, Wishclaw Talisman, and Force of Will. So Pongo also had some of those same cards in his opening hand as Cobblepott, but his hand seems like it's going to be going in a different direction.
Yeah, so this hand definitely has some interesting possibilities. If he's feeling especially brave, he can go turn 1, Dark Ritual, Wishclaw Talisman, Imperial Seal, which opens up a lot of possibilities. It could be some sort of like breach based combo, or he could try and find the mana. Like if the Imperial Seal, for example, finds Dockside Extortionist, depending on what his opponents play, that could actually set up very nicely into a food chain win on the next turn, because if the Dockside makes enough mana to cast the food chain off the Wishclaw Talisman, then you just exile Dockside, exile the Scourge, and you're set.
Right.
So this definitely has a lot of possibilities. But if he decides he doesn't want to do that, it does again become slightly awkward, because there's no actual acceleration in this hand apart from that Dark Ritual, and it doesn't line up super well. Like, you might think, oh, well, just tutor for food chain. You already have the Eternal Scourge. But then you're still looking at, like, you need 4 mana plus the Dark Ritual to cast food chain and Eternal Scourge, because you don't have a Dork to bridge that gap.
Right.
So then maybe you're looking at the Wishclaw Talisman sort of later. You could go turn 1 Imperial Seal for food chain or Dockside or whatever. Turn 2 Wishclaw Talisman, and then turn 3 use the Wishclaw for Dockside Extortionist is a possibility, but there's definitely, this is a hand that can fall apart pretty quickly if it gets disrupted. Like, it could be really bad, for example, if that Spell Snare counters either the Wishclaw Talisman or like a Dockside or whatever he happens to get. That could definitely set him pretty far back, because there's no permanent acceleration. So if you burn the Dark Ritual and then it doesn't work, then you're sort of back to where you started.
Interesting. Well, we will see how things go for these, for all of their opening hands here. Starting us off here will be Pongo as we jump in, like we said. So like we said, their spleen is, we're going to see what he's going to go for here at the beginning. But if it were you here sitting in this position, it's your team turn 3 and Mind Sculptor's buddy here. What is it, if you were in Pongo's position, would you be doing?
I think
as Pongo goes and gets the Bayou off the Verdant.
I think at this table, I think you might just go for it. Everyone is playing a deck that it really hurts if they don't develop their mana the way they want to. So I think fetching the Bayou here is a little bit suspect. Obviously, we don't know what he drew for turn. So if he drew something that needs green, then that makes a lot of sense. But otherwise, I would have liked to see, I think the best line, at least the best line I can come up with here, is Badlands, which enables you to cast your Dockside Extortionist, which I think at this table is likely to make a decent amount of mana very early. But there's certainly a few ways he could be trying to play this. Maybe he's sort of zeroing in on like a non-food chain centric line, which is also possible.
Right.
This hand doesn't quite get there with like Breach and LED, because your tutors, like, you don't have Breach tutors. You don't have tutors that just win with Breach, right? Like, if he sealed for Breach and then Wish Claws for, or I guess if he sealed for LED and then Wish Claws for Breach, then like Imperial Seal doesn't get there because the card's on top. All right,
and so Dark Ritual also here from Cobblepott.
Okay, so
and a little bit of lag here in the video, and here comes the Imperial Seal from him.
Guys, they're twins.
This seems to be the. Are we going to call this the Mind Sculptor special now, or something like that?
Please no. So if I'm Cobble, one of the things that would be really good for him to draw is just another 2-mana rock, because then he can play. Thought Vessel, use that to play the Soul Ring, use that to play his rock. Or if he just hit a land, that definitely opens up a lot of possibilities for his next turn.
Right.
If he didn't hit either of those, then I don't know.
Comes the Soul Ring.
Assuming he hit a land, he is representing a turn. He's representing a Nas next turn. So yeah, we'll see if he did hit the land and what he tutored for.
Yeah, because based on what we know left, he has Ghostly Pilfer and Pact of Negation left in his hand.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so I think this is exactly the position that I worried Cam would be in last game, is something like this, right? Where he's now looking, okay, am I actually tapping out? Okay, he drew a Llanowar Elves, which is definitely, like, it might seem
significantly
minor,
better than the Boreal Druid.
So much better than Boreal Druid, because it means that next turn he can play Thrasios and hold up Spell Snare. So we'll see if that's what he chooses to do. But yeah, like, if I'm him, both of Cobble and Pongo, I have to be respecting, or at least considering the possibility of an attempted turn 2 win. And
right.
That's something he's just not really set up to deal with.
Right. Well, we got the turn 1 Tymna there from Dylan, and we passed it back over to Pongo, who now has whatever he tutored for and an Open Wishclaw Talisman, and so we'll really see what we got here. He does have the Tropical Island left in his hand, along with the Eternal Scourge and the Force of Will, and if he didn't get a blue card off of his draw for last turn, the Force of Will is pretty much just a dead card in the hand.
Yeah, if he did, though, that actually might work out really well for him, because then he's in a position where he can counter Cobblepot's attempted win. So it looks like he drew a Wooded Foothills, which I'm imagining is not what he Imperial Sealed for. So that
very
means
interesting Imperial Seal.
That means that he has whatever he sealed for, and then Trop, Scourge, and Force of Will. I am not super familiar with exactly this iteration of the list. I don't know if there is a clean win line from this position, but it looks to me, I'm not seeing one. Nothing's leaping off the page.
Well, he gets a Badlands off of the Wooded Foothills, and it's going to be shuffling up there. And let's see what we get next here. He tutored up a Dockside Extortionist.
My guess is he was hoping this would be making more than 2 treasures here. So yeah, this does set up nicely into a turn 3, but right. Obviously turn 3s are less nice than turn 2s.
Smothering Tithe.
So it looks like Cobble presumably did not hit a land, and then tutored this Smothering Tithe, which I like. It definitely solves his sort of color and mana issues, and still leaves him potentially threatening. Like next turn he can either just play the Tymna, or he can, if he does have something threatening in his hand, he's likely to be able to cast it. Yeah, I love just jamming Smothering Tithe.
I got to, in a game I was playing on when was I playing? Oh yeah, on the Mystic Remoras. I was playing my Thrasios Tymna Wheels deck, and I got to go turn 1. I had a Lotus Petal, turn 1 Dark Ritual Lotus Petal, and
Smothering Tithe.
Smothering Tithe, and that was so satisfying.
Okay, so this is interesting. We're seeing the Grim Monolith from Cam. I think that so he does have the Mana Conflict, which means that he can play Crom and still be holding his Spell Snare on his next turn. Okay, yeah. So we're seeing the Mana Vault from Dylan. Yeah, he not only did he miss his second land drop, he just announced it to the table. So yeah, if I'm Cam, I actually strongly consider just tucking that Tymna. That means that he misses his second land drop on turn 3 as well, because it's on top of his library, and he can't recast the Tymna. And then you basically traded Submerge for like 3 turns from Dylan. And yes, Dylan's behind, but when you're playing Police, just one fewer person to have to police is definitely very appealing. Okay.
And Talisman is getting activated after the Tropical Island comes down.
Yeah. So we know Pongo's hand is whatever he drew this turn, which if it's a blue card, then his Force of Will is live, and Eternal Scourge. But if he did not, then his food chain will more than likely run into Cobble's Pact of Negation, which I'm sure Cam will be overjoyed to see, because not only does Pongo not win, it means Cobblepot's not doing much with his turn. I guess.
Now, who did he give the Wishclaw Talisman to?
That definitely does matter.
He gives it to Dylan.
Which is 100% correct. Dylan is certainly in the worst position, and is also the farthest away, so most likely that someone will come up with answers for it.
Right.
So now if I'm Cam, I really think about tucking the Tymna in response to the Wishclaw Talisman. But I might do it if he just went to combat. I'd consider doing it. Just stop him from getting that draw. So Cobblepot, I guess he can still cast Tymna after. Oh
yeah, Cobblepot has generated quite a few tokens here.
I'm very surprised Pongo didn't go for it. So he just activated Wishclaw and passed. Okay, I don't think I like that play very much. Yeah, maybe we missed some comments that were made that sort of revealed some intentions or possibilities or something that made him not go for it. Because, like someone basically saying, like, I can stop you, but then I'm worried about whatever, or things like that. But maybe Cam, was thinking he would have to submerge the dockside, and obviously didn't want to have to do that. But, this is kind of an interesting... We're casting a
Boreal Druid.
Okay, we're casting a Boreal Druid, which I don't like, and we're casting it using a Trop and not a Llanowar Elves, which I extra don't like. I think that, and we're just passing. All right, so we're just passing. We didn't pay for tithe. I don't see what he's doing here. Obviously, he's drawn something that we don't know about, because otherwise this play seems strange, at the very least.
Well, he still has Ponder, Submerge, Spell Snare.
Well, yeah, so Ponder's a sorcery, so that's off the table. Submerge is free, so that's not what he's holding up mana for. Spell Snare is 1 mana, so does this list run, is this like a dig through time, possibly? Or... I'm actually going to just take a peek at this deck list.
Cabal Ritual, while you do that, here from Dylan, who is firing off a Cabal Ritual. He'll have 2 floating off of the off of the Mana Vault, and it looks like he's going to try and fire off an Ad Nauseam. Ooh, excuse me, a Necropotence from Dylan.
Wow,
Pongo will have priority.
That's certainly a series of draws from Dylan, because... he didn't even have to use the Wishclaw. So he drew a Ritual and a Necropotence naturally.
Correct.
Which, if anything was going to get him back into the game, this is it.
He's paying 20 life, it seems, so he is going to try and go for it to some extent.
Okay, so here's where he can do the Galaxy Brain play. You exile 20 cards. Okay, he didn't. I was about to say, you exile 20 cards to the... I guess you can just do it next turn, but essentially you can exile the cards to the Necropotence and then activate the Wish Claw, figure out what you've exiled, and then tutor appropriately. Like, you go through your deck and you don't find one of your... Like, you don't find Aureox Salvagers, so you go, okay, well, I guess I'll get Lion's Eye Diamond or whatever. Especially because he had the floating mana, and he's going to be... Like, mana's his big issue, right? Like, next turn, the Mana Vault doesn't untap, so he plays his land, he has 2, and then every piece of fast mana is 1 fewer of the seven cards he gets. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how exactly this his next turn is going to play out.
Now it did sound like Dylan was saying he was trying to play around potential opposition agent from Pongo, listening here to the game chat, but I don't really know that Pongo is using that Wish Claw for a opposition agent.
I mean, it is like scenario. It's a possibility, right? Actually, it's not a possibility because it's not in his deck, but theoretically, you can certainly do that. You can just grab the opposition agent and then just steal the tutor whenever somebody else tries to use it. And like it certainly looks strange that he tutored and then just passed the turn without casting anything.
Right.
So I don't fault Dylan for being cautious here. He's drawing strange conclusions from Pongo's play. I don't understand Pongo's play, so I sympathize. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe Pongo's plan is essentially to just wait until he draws the blue card for his Force of Will. Alternatively, he could have got a Naz thinking that the instant speed was like good enough to make him be able to resolve it consistently.
Right.
Like whereas just jamming the food chain is somewhat risky.
Especially if you have a Force of Will in hand that can't really do much.
Yeah.
Well, he keeps a 7 here. We're kind of seeing what he's exiling here.
So yeah,
Still waiting for that.
There's a possibility if I'm Dylan here that I go for a smaller one on this turn, say like 10 or 15, somewhere between 10 and 15, and then just keep as much mana as possible, and then next turn just play out all the mana I can, and then do my like 20 to 25 life necro. Right, like if I could develop myself up to say like 5 mana, and then necro for win cons for like whatever my win is.
Right. Well, and the awkward
turn.
part with this, is without an emergent zone and or a final fortune. Your hand here is what you have here from the Necropotence is quite awkward, paying this much life, especially tapped out. But I also totally understand what he's doing. It's just,
yeah, I guess he could.
And again, from my perspective, I probably would have just wanted to refill my hand. But I'm also the mid-range player of our group, so So he is exiling quite a few cards there. Among them was Peer into the Abyss, Mox Amber, some other cards.
The dual caster mage is also important.
Yes.
Yeah, so presumably, I guess the other thing he could be doing here, if he just keeps a bunch of mana, then because he has the Wish Claw, he can just develop a bunch of mana and then tutor for whatever he thinks his win con is. This works out quite well for him if he's trying to do a Bomberman combo, which it looks like.
Drown into the lock on the Eternal Scourge. And
wow. Okay, that's definitely aggressive. I guess it does let him get in with his Timna on Pongo, which is nice. Oh, we're seeing some sort of response.
Veil of Summer from Pongo.
That is not a bad response. I'm honestly... Huh. If he has food chain, then this sequencing is... I think I would have just gone for it here if I had Veil.
He says he's going for a win. So we'll see. So he's drawing off the Veil. And that gives Cobblepott another... But he's got a Lotus Petal.
Do we have a Petal and a land? No.
He just passes the turn.
Oh, maybe he said he wasn't going for a win? Which, I mean, makes sense because he was pretty far from being able to present a win.
Right.
I believe we still have one... We have whatever he tutored for, and then I think one unknown card in his hand, and then the Force of Will.
Something along those lines. That sounds about correct. The Scourge is now out of his hand. The only known card we have from Cobble at the moment is the Pact of Negation.
Yeah.
Sakashima has entered the chat, boys and girls. We now have 2 Tymnas.
That is a pretty good number of Tymnas.
2 Tymnas is certainly better than 1 Tymna.
I guess I don't think I was paying enough attention. I didn't see what Dylan discarded to his like that we knew about in his hand. We saw the Praetor's Grasp go. I don't think we saw the Yawgmoth's Will. I don't think the Yawg's Will did. Sorry, you think it did?
I don't think it did.
Which is kind of surprising because Yawg-Will is not great when you have Necropotence out. Like, you can't do Lion's Eye Diamond, Yawgmoth's Will stuff because it all gets exiled.
Right.
So that's a little bit surprising that he kept that.
Wow. Pilfer goes at Dylan and Tymna goes at Cam, and he's going to draw 4 cards.
Yeah, that's... I've heard that drawing 4 cards is actually pretty good.
I have heard that as well. And, really, Cobble is doing a pretty good job in this game of really staying with it. That Smothering Tithe is keeping him in it because that one land is, hey, there it is. Second land for the turn. You would hope after drawing that many cards he'd get there.
So I guess what Dylan might be thinking is he can go for a Dockside line here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you count the Wishclaw Talisman artifacts that can't be sort of easily sacrificed. So I guess that doesn't quite get there with just Tymna and Dockside and Curio, which I also believe he did not discard. But if he has any creature that's cheaper than Tymna, then that lets him go for the win, assuming he found 1 extra mana, because then he can, like, if he has a land and any piece of acceleration, he tutors the Dockside, plays the Dockside, plays Curio, plays the creature. I guess he'd need some extra mana just because like it would depend on if Cobble cracks all his treasures in response, and Pongo as well. But if you just see the Dockside, you probably don't crack all of them. Maybe Cobble does because he's getting more, but I think it would be a big ask of Pongo to sacrifice those treasures, or the treasure in the Lotus Petal here.
Right.
So then you're still looking at, I think, just enough mana to play Curio, a 1 or 2 drop, and then Dockside again.
Yeah, it's things are looking a little odd from a table perspective. I know we're on Cam's turn, and he's kind of figuring out what he needs to do here. The sequencing is certainly putting him in a weird spot.
Yeah, and like, okay, maybe he was holding up sort of more interaction than we knew about. He wanted to hold up multiple pieces. But it certainly doesn't feel good if you're him to have held up, what was that, six mana for a turn cycle and done nothing with it.
Right.
Blue, colorless. We're transmuting Muddle the Mixture. All right.
What do you think he is grabbing off of this search?
I mean, certainly Dockside Extortionist is a possibility. It would let him cast like Thrasios and Grom and still hold up his interaction, which would be very appealing here. The list isn't on Breach, which is another favorite for Muddle the Mixture. Maybe he's going for Kinnan and playing some sort of long game. So yeah, we'll see exactly. I guess so. The way he played that, turn didn't even let him hold up the Muddle and the Spell Snare because he tapped his Tropical Island.
He is going to get a Dockside off of that.
That's not at all surprising. So this is making a guaranteed 5 mana plus whatever, plus 1 for each treasure or petal that isn't cracked by Pongo and Cobblepott.
And nobody is responding, it seems. So he's going to get a big old grip of treasures here.
Yeah, so this, with the Grim Monolith, this lets him cast Crom, cast Thrasios, and still hold Spell Snare. Even if Cobblepot and Pongo crack everything, which I very much doubt they will. Like, this is also, because this is a teamer deck, that he's not casting Peer into the Abyss or Ad Nauseam. So I could certainly see them saying, this is not likely to be a game-ending threat. And based on what we know about his hand, they would be right, although it's certainly possible that he drew into something that would make that incorrect. If he has Deadeye Navigator, then they might be in for a bit of a rude awakening.
Deadeye Navigator would be quite the card right now. Cobble has 8.
Well, so I guess
artifacts.
Also, if Cobble doesn't want to crack his treasures, then this Submerge might actually become a ritual with Thrasios, which would be pretty funny. Submerge the Dockside, draw it again, play it again.
Cam said he did not think he was going to get that
far. Yeah, I honestly kind of did. I think
what's that meme with from SpongeBob with Plankton where I don't know, I never thought I'd get here. Like,
yeah, exactly. Although I think if I'm Cobble here, I'm sacrificing some number of my treasures. Maybe I go down to 1 or 2, so that I can hold up some sort of blue instant. But I think that, like, with a Smothering Tithe, I don't think Cobble's hurting for mana. So
right.
I think that, and in Teamer, people always say, like, oh, what can you do with 9 that you can't do with 7 or 6 or whatever? In Teamer, that question actually has real answers.
Right.
Like, when you have black, that question is like, there is no real answer to that question. It's like, well, sure, you can Demonic Tutor for, like, we're talking about the difference between 1, 2, 3, 7. We're talking about 10 versus 15 here, right? You can Demonic Tutor for Peer, in black, but in Teamer, this is actually, your win cons and your value pieces are bad enough that 5 or 6 mana here might actually make a difference.
Let's see what he gets off of this Ponder, because we know the Ponder. So now all that's left in his hand that we know of is that Submerge and Spell Snare. And he has 12 treasures and a grim monolith.
That is a lot of mana.
That is indeed a lot of mana. That is truly a lot. So he said it sounds like he got a good card off of that Ponder from what he is saying there in the gameplay chat. Lord Dracus on to the dockside.
Okay.
Does he...
Okay, so this... Does this get...
So he gets a Muddle the Mixture back. Would he get a Snap?
This does get there. Yeah, so this is getting there. I believe he plays Snap. Yeah, he does play Snap. So
yeah.
Even if they crack all of their treasures, it still makes... The loop makes 5 tokens and costs 4 to repeat, so...
He's netting 1.
He's netting 1, which is enough when you have Thrasios in the command zone. And he does have the mana to get there. He goes to 7 for the 7 treasures for the transmute. And then Snap is free, and then Recast the Dockside is...
And he's also... transmute the Muddle.
Yep. So...
I'm interested to see if Cobble... Like, what happens here, if anybody's ever going to try and stop him here. He has 3 cards in hand, 2 of which is a Submerge and a Spell Snare.
Yeah, I mean, so we know Cobble still does have that Pactum negation, which obviously he doesn't want to cast, but...
Right. Pongo also does have a Force of Will. But I don't know how many cards Pongo has in hand.
He has, like, 1 unknown card in his hand, if my counting is accurate. So there's a very real chance, even if it's 2 or 3, there's still a very real chance that he just doesn't have the blue card to pitch.
Right.
Which is the punish for cutting Mist Hollow-Griffin, right?
I suppose so. Tapping the Grim Monolith, floating to colorless.
Alright, so I think
casting the Snap.
So there's definitely a couple places where you might decide to interact if you're Cobblepott. So this is like the cleanest. And we're doing it here. I think there's an argument for countering one of the Dockside or the Lord Dracus, because that just means that like this way any bounce spell and he can just immediately resume the combo, whereas if one of Dockside or Lord Dracus was in the graveyard, he couldn't.
Right. Mana Drain the Pact of Negation. That's...
I mean, you know what?
And Cobble doesn't have a response, and it seems the rest of the table doesn't have a response. Does Cam just win here?
So, see, yeah, Dylan didn't find his deflecting SWAT. Pongo... it is possible that Pongo did, in fact, find the blue card for Force, and he is choosing to interact somewhere other than where Cobblepott wants to interact. But... Oh?
Uh-oh.
Oh? Okay.
And let's see what he's got.
So it
looks like Pongo's got something. He's got a Tainted Pact.
Well, there's a Spell Snare, so this doesn't work out too well.
Spell Snare.
Oh my goodness. Cobblepott coming in clutch with the Mental Misstep.
Wow. Mental Misstep does get there.
Pongo's Tainted Pact.
Wow. You don't see people mental misstepping other people's...
So we can we can just stop here. Yeah, okay. So again, I don't love this this interaction point. But I guess they might like. Yeah, I don't know about this.
Doesn't have anything else here.
I think the correct play was actually let him resolve the dockside, counter the Lore Dracus, and then play his commanders, because they need something to stop Dylan, right? Like Dylan just had a 20 card Necropotence. He has this Wishclaw Talisman, and now it's become pretty clear that no one has any interaction left. So I think actually letting Cam get the mana from the second dockside here was right.
Yeah, he doesn't have the mana he needs to submerge his dockside, play Thrasios, and get the dockside back. He's 2 mana off from doing that. And he is passing the turn with 3 treasures up.
Yeah.
Mana Vault, he loses 1 there. And let's see, he's got an Exotic Orchard for land from turn, so he's making some mana.
Yep, this makes all the colors.
Dylan is attacking Cam with the Tymna because Cam stacked his Lord Dracus underneath the Dockside Extortionist, which leaves it at a 1-2, not as a 2-3.
Yeah,
good old mutate.
I feel like that was probably like a mechanical, and when I say mechanical, I mean like physically mechanical error, and not like a not like a sequencing or like presumably you put it on. It wasn't a deliberate.
Well, it feels like bestow, but it's not bestow.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see what Dylan has here. He did have that giant Necropotence last turn. He's at 18 life with a Wishclaw Talisman, a Godless Shrine, and a Exotic Orchard that's going to make whatever color his heart desires. Pongo has 1 card in hand. We don't know what that card is.
But it's presumably what he tutored. I think it's Food Chain.
A Food Chain would seem correct.
Unless he tutored the Tainted Pact, which I could see the argument for just because it's more flexible, but he was tight on mana, so I don't think that's a good line, even if that is the line he took. Okay, so we've got Lion's Eye Diamond.
Lion's Eye Diamond does come in from Dylan here, who I believe still has a Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah, but again, he has the Necropotence out, so this... He might walk face first into playing himself here. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Because the exile in the graveyard.
Also, I think wasn't he at 18 at the start of his turn? Shouldn't he be at 19 here? I think he took a damage from the Mana Vault.
Yeah, he took it from the Mana Vault.
He shouldn't have though. He skips his draw step, but hopefully that doesn't become relevant. Yeah, that's one that a lot of people miss. Mana Vault has a upkeep trigger and a draw step trigger. And it's at the beginning of your draw step. If it's tapped, you take 1 damage. Okay, so we have the
Simian Spirit Guide. Cloudstone Curio is coming in.
What?
And he... Okay.
What? Okay, hang on a second. So we've got 1, 2, 3... I don't understand this. This line seems very loose.
So he has the LED left up. Curio doesn't really do much at the moment. He can't really, unless he has a Roger I mean, even then, that doesn't do anything.
No,
for
if he
him.
has Rogue Rack, he wins here. Although I think he actually discarded Rogue Rack to his...
Does he win here with Roger?
Yeah. So the line, you play Rogue Rack, you crack LED, Wishclaw for Dockside, Profit.
Profit.
But Dockside and Timna doesn't get there here.
Right.
Because once everyone cracks all of their treasures, you're left with 5 artifacts. And it costs 5 to do the loop. So this was... I mean, maybe he actually didn't have...
Oh, he did. He did get rid of the Yogswell.
Well.
Okay.
He pitched a Grand Abolisher as well. So I think that
Yes.
was a mistake. But maybe he was thinking that Cam was not going to be attempting a win and was going to be presenting credible interaction.
Right. Food chain did come down for Pongo. Pongo does exile the Pact of the Eternal Scourge, and it looks like he might be able to do this unencumbered.
Yeah, I think that this was. I'd be very interested to see what Dylan kept off this Necropotence, because I see a lot of... Oh, that is true.
Cobblepott does draw... This is one of those weird edge cases that I always kind of forget that Ghostly Pilferer does this. Mystical Tutor in response to the draw spell.
That's interesting. I think I would actually not do that. Like, there's almost no reason, right? Oh, well, I guess he's just getting ad nauseum here. That seems good.
Let's see.
So Pongo's saying, I can't continue comboing, so he's not going to get interaction here, which is true. Pongo seems to think he's going to get a wheel. I think
ad nauseum seems like the correct answer.
Well, I mean, he does have the Smothering Tithe, right? So wheel is obviously pretty insane. But I think with the amount of mana he has, I think that ad naus is probably the play. Yeah,
I'm not gonna let him draw his whole deck.
certainly. When I was evaluating, I definitely forgot that the Ghostly Pilferer was there. When I was evaluating that card, I remember saying, "Hey, it does in fact stop Food Chain from winning," and then everyone stopped playing Food Chain. Hey, here we are. He gets the
ad nauseum on top.
Yeah, so he's going to ad naus. He's going to have 4 treasures up, which means any interaction and he's fine. And then he's going to untap with the Smothering Tithe, and then at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, he's going to have 5 mana plus whatever treasures he still has. And obviously any wheel is pretty insane here.
And I'm assuming here that Cobblepot is not going to have really anything getting in his way here.
Yeah.
3 cards left in his hand. Nobody has anything. So let's see what happens.
Well, okay, so that immediately puts paid to any hope that Pongo might have had.
Oh, there's a silence there. I think Cobble might just have this.
Yeah, so now he just needs to hit any action card before he burns through all of his life. Okay, Demonic Consultation. Well, there we go.
There it is. You can stop there,
you
right?
Can stop there, but there's no point in stopping there, right? Like, you might as well just see if you can find that 1 extra piece of protection, or Twister.
Force of Will.
So now...
Yeah, I think that gets him there.
I mean, now if he takes 1 from the Dockside... Oh, no, he has a Timna. Yeah.
He also has, what's it called? He has the Mana Drain was in there, so I think it's pretty safe to say he can win this turn.
Yeah.
Especially if he has a
certainly
silence.
It wasn't necessary to get more protection, but, Wow, he's not even casting the silence. That's
casting the silence. Interesting.
I mean, it's pretty clear that his opponents don't have anything, but
right.
You know, I do it just to enforce good habits.
Absolutely.
And I've got like 6 counter spells. You sure do.
Yep.
And Submerge does not do it. I guess that is the other thing.
It doesn't get you there.
Maybe, I'm trying to figure out, was the Submerge somehow... Did that become known information? Like maybe Cam revealed it at some point to try and convince someone... Like maybe he revealed it when Pongo was trying to go off. Because that would explain why Dylan didn't go for the... That would explain why Dylan didn't go for the Dockside Curio line on his turn.
Right.
But if he didn't know about that, then I think that certainly you have to go for it there.
Right. Well, we saw Cobblepott with this Timna Sakashima farm list, this Esper farm list, take 2 games here tonight. And really, what's your takeaway of this list and what it's kind of doing right now?
Well, so I think that this was like a very good pod for this deck to play into, because like it certainly didn't look like a farm deck in these games, right? He was casting Timna and drawing a bunch of cards and sort of playing a little bit of police and playing value engines and all that stuff. And so basically he was like the slowest of the fast decks, which meant that he had, you know, he was in a position where like he had just a little bit more disruption than the other fast decks, which meant that like they were trying, and also a better long game potential, which meant they were trying to go fast. He got to play control alongside Cam for the first little bit, and then sort of turn around when he was ready and go like, yeah, you may have thought it was a control deck, but here I am, you know, jamming a Naz and backing it up with 3 counter spells because I've been drawing 3 extra cards a turn, and, you know, then I win. So this I think was a good pod that illustrates a list like this. Like with the Timna Sakashima list, it's like, okay, the double Timna grind value. This pod was beautifully constructed to sort of illustrate how this deck can sort of pivot to a less all-in game plan. Right. You know, it has 28 instants, the vast majority of which are some form of interaction. And I think we saw that on display, along with the power of some evasive creatures in Timna.
Right, absolutely. It was great having Dylan and Cam on from Play to Win. I know they did some other games, so we'll be over on their channel here coming up in the next either few days or few weeks. I'm not entirely sure when those are coming out, but keep an eye on that out on Play to Win's gameplay channel. So with that, any final thoughts before we take off?
No, had a lot of fun. These were some good games.
Absolutely.
No non-games, which is always nice to see. And I think that these are some lists that, you know, I definitely want to see more of, and see, you know, them interact with some of the other, you know, popular lists that we might see, and I think there's definitely some development left, particularly in the farm lists, and this Underworld Sliver list to an extent, because it's relatively new. And who knows? It's entirely possible that Thrasios Crom will get a new toy someday as well. So yeah, these lists can definitely be going places, and they definitely played some good games today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me here in the booth this week, and thank you for tuning in and watching us this week. Just a reminder, make sure that you like and subscribe. That helps us out here on the channel. But as well, you can check out our Patreon. We have several different tiers there that give you all sorts of different rewards, all of which include getting access to the Discord channel. There you can interact with us and get some different experiences, get some we have some, what's the word I'm looking for? We have some gameplay specifically coming out for Patreon that you can only see there as well. With that, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. This is the Mind Sculptors gameplay series.